Hello, all, and welcome to the Fantasy and Sci-Fi Fanatics podcast. I'm your host, Dino Coolbaugh. Today, I have me a very special guest, Rachel L. Schade. Rachel, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Oh, excellent, excellent. So glad that I can. Anytime I can get somebody from TikTok and get them on here, it always feels really good because it's still a newer app for me, especially like making friends and stuff. Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, I've had a little bit longer, so I feel especially good anytime I can find somebody on TikTok and get them to come on. So it makes me feel like I'm actually, using my time wisely as I'm scrolling through things that I probably shouldn't be and probably be writing. But yeah, welcome to
Same.
yeah, exactly. One of my friends is always like, Dan, I saw the video you posted. You should be writing. I'm like, how did you see the video? Like, caught. Uh,
Oops.
it does suck me in now, though. I have too many book people like yourself on there, and I'm like, oh, repost. Oh, share it to Facebook. So I'm a little addicted to the book news now, but I feel like that's okay because that's
Yeah.
what I like. So,
Right. It's like, yeah, fine. You find new books to read and you
oh,
connect with other authors. So like that's always worthwhile, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I saw somebody the other day, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I just love her cover!" And I like, took a picture of it, and I sent it to my buddy. He's helping me. We're trying to see what we can do with Photoshop and Canva ourselves. And now it's just kind of become a game between the two of us. Like, find something you really like, and he goes, we're just gonna buy all these books." I'm like, "Yeah, but there's Kindle, so it's okay." So,
Exactly.
yeah. Well, we'll go with that first question there, Rachel. What has your writing journey been like up until this point?
Yeah. So, honestly, I have been writing for as long as I can remember.
Oh wow.
When I was a little kid, even before I could actually read or write, I would, scribble a little book and
Yeah,
put
yeah.
together this little book. I would take it to my mom and I would tell her the story and make her write it down. So I was putting
Oh,
together books even before I could actually write. So it's kind of been, I don't know, in my blood. It's been what I've wanted to do, pretty much my whole life. But it wasn't until, gosh, 2015, 2016 when I
mm,
started really looking at indie publishing
mm.
seriously and feeling like, you know what, maybe I'm at a point, where I can actually start publishing. I felt like I had a story that I really loved that I could really polish. And that's kind of when I started going that direction. But I would say really it was 2018. I rebranded my
Oh,
first series, my very first book, got kind of upgraded the covers and everything,
oh,
and started kind of spreading the word more, became more active on social media and all of that. Finished a trilogy. And then in 2020 decided, you know what, I really want to take my writing seriously. Let's, stop treating it like a hobby and writing every once in a while. Let's write every day, even if it's just a little. Let's, I kind of challenged myself, like, what can I do? Surely I can write a book a little faster. Sometimes I was taking a year or more,
mm,
and life happens, but
yeah,
I was like, this is too slow for me. Like this is my dream. Why am I not chasing this?
yeah,
And so I drafted a book in 4 months, which was a record time for me in
yeah, yeah.
2020.
That's
Dove
great
into the
timing.
next book and said, you know what, I want to this next series, which I originally thought was going to be a trilogy, became a 4 book series.
Oh, wow.
But I said, you know what, I'm gonna write this and I'm gonna release them, closer together, a few months apart. Not really rapid release in the indie community, but rapid release for me.
Yeah, yeah,
And, I'm like, I'm going to really be serious about branding myself and reaching out, to the Instagram, like the Bookstagram community on there. I was a little bit late to the game on TikTok. I think I joined sometime in 2021.
yeah. Mm,
But, all of those decisions I feel like have really kind of launched my career, forward, to the point where I'm like, okay, I can release books every year. I feel like I'm kind of making it, I guess. Like my dreams are coming true. And that's a
mm.
really exciting thing. So yeah, it's just every year it's like I see new achievements, new goals, new dreams reached. And it's been a really exciting journey. So excited to see what the future brings.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, that's awesome. I have to ask because anytime I get somebody on who has rebranded, I'm just curious as to what you did exactly to rebrand. Was it book covers and then just kind of like a re-release, like in terms of your social media platforms themselves? Was there anything in particular that you kind of learned from the first time that maybe worked better the second time? I was just curious about that experience for you.
Yeah. So the funny thing is, the first time I released my book, I pretty much released it into a void.
Mm,
Didn't really, tell a lot of people, like friends and family bought it. I was like, oh,
mm,
this is cool. I'd sell a few books here and there. And then as I became more active on Instagram, kind of started studying what other indie authors were doing and just educating myself a little bit more, saving up a little bit more money. I was like, you know what? I can do better. I can do better than this. The first cover was I don't know, kind of quirky.
mm,
It was a like I had an artist paint it, but it wasn't really yeah, it just didn't fit the genre, didn't really
mm.
fit what was selling. So I when I rebranded in 2018 with a new cover, I I think I announced it on social media, but I like I said, I didn't have a huge following, so it wasn't really a big deal. I think that's kind of when people started discovering my book for the first time.
Mm.
Um, I ironically, I actually recently rebranded that book again. I'm doing a makeover for that whole series again. And so that one was a bit of a bigger deal because I actually had a following.
Mm.
But I felt like again the style, they're beautiful covers, the old covers, but and they look great in print and great on a shelf, but they were kind of dark and the font was
Mm.
kind of thin. And so when you're scrolling on Amazon,
Yeah.
those thumbnails, it wasn't popping. It wasn't really, it wasn't he's like you kind of want to blend in a little bit with your cover, by
Yeah.
like looking like the genre and like other books in your genre, but you also want to stand out by, having something kind of unique or eye-catching or just really, really beautiful.
Yeah.
And so I decided, you know what, let's let's go ahead, let's make the jump and rebrand again. And so I posted about it all over, mostly on Instagram. I still was kind of figuring TikTok out at the time.
Mm.
I sent out a newsletter and I actually created a graphic in Canva, showing the old book cover and then the new book cover and saying, this is the date that
Oh, that's
this
cool.
this book is retiring. This book is coming out on this date. Because I really wanted to give readers, kind of warning if, they've
Oh,
been
yeah.
eyeing the old book cover, well, if you want that cover,
Mm.
give them time to buy it.
Yeah, that's
Didn't want
smart.
anyone angry because nothing nothing frustrates readers more than having like a series that doesn't match or something like that. Like, for whatever reason they had the next two books in the series or they wanted the whole complete series and they weren't quick enough, just figured let's give them some warning. So I'm actually getting close to rebranding the second book in the series with a new cover too. And still going to give warning. Didn't feel like I needed to give quite as much warning this time because I kind of told everybody, hey, the whole series is going to be rebranded back in
Yeah.
September. So they kind of had some time to start getting the first one. But yeah, just kind of alerting people, hey, I'm making this decision. If you love the old cover still, I get it. I love them too. Just time to move on to something new.
Yeah.
But grab those old covers if you want them.
Oh, that's
And I actually
awesome.
have a lot of readers who are like, "Oh, I want both." So now I own the old covers. Now I have to buy your series again.
I know that feeling.
Like, well, thanks for being such a fan.
Yeah, yeah. One of my friends is like, he did that, and then I'm like, oh, I'm like, but like the painting by Felix Ortiz is the same, but he's got all this other cool work around it. I mean, the book you open up was cool. He actually gave me a first one a while back. I was like trying to buy it, and they were, it was the pandemic, and he's like, I'll just send you one. Like, I'll just send you one. So like send him shipping and stuff, and then I was like, oh, I really want to buy the next one. So then I
Yeah.
backed this Kickstarter for his novella, but I was like, he goes, Dan, it's like the same book almost. I said, no, there's all these little things that you change that are beautiful and different. And he was like, but the cover's the same. I said, just don't tell my wife. We're fine, But I just have both sitting there, like, and I love the cover that Felix did for him. But yeah, it's funny because you mentioned the thumbnail. I just have to say, like, I've just noticed so many times where, particularly on Amazon Kindle, whether or not I'm on my phone or Kindle itself, where, even in black and white, like it really does make a difference, and I think that
Yeah.
if you can have an artist, I think that should be the end goal, right? Particularly if you're indie and you're if your goal is to sell audio, sorry, audiobooks, I guess audiobooks too, with those thumbnails, but trying to sell anything digitally, right? I think you really need to have it checked in that medium first. I know quite a few people that
Yeah.
had gorgeous covers that did not do that. And then, they don't show up in black and white, on Kindle as well. And I think that that is something that's really smart of you to think about and to change. I've seen quite a few people, where we've interviewed where that's really been the thing that really helps them, particularly on Kindle, because right, they're sending people to the site and then they're like, oh, okay, and whether or not it's, wherever it is, right, that covers really helping sell your book or not sell your book. So I think that's really smart to think about.
Yeah, I think it's the beauty of being an indie author too is, you can do that whenever you
Yeah.
feel like you need to do it.
Yep.
It's, just a decision away.
Yeah. And now with
And I think
Kickstarter,
it's important to be flexible like that.
yeah,
Yeah, now with
the
Kickstarter,
special
man,
editions,
even
like,
if you just want to do the special edition, yeah, I've seen so many authors doing gorgeous special editions and just having such great success with those because everyone wants those beautiful books. Like,
oh my
how can
gosh.
you resist?
You see in Ben Galley's the unwritten, like he's got like these amazing hardcover, black hardcover with like metallic red and blues. I mean,
Oh,
just
I need to
oh
look
my
that
gosh,
up.
you gotta look it up. Like I was like, I want to do my book like that now. Like, I mean, just so cool. He's got illustrations in them, and but I mean, I'm like that just goes to show you, that like, and I like AC Cobble's another one, who did some really great covers and different things with the foiling, and like some leaf print and stuff on some of his. Yeah, I think it's amazing what you can do on Kickstarter, and especially if you have a following. It's like Michael J. Sullivan, and who I met actually years ago in person, was great. And his wife were actually on Wizards, Words, and Words, and they were talking about, if you have a following, Kickstarter is a really good way, to play with the house's money, so to speak. So I think that's yeah, it's nice, right? Because you can just up and decide that as an indie
Yeah,
author.
you don't have to worry like, oh, this special edition is going to cost thousands of dollars to produce. Like,
Yep.
okay, cool. My fans want it. They'll make it happen.
Yep. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's funny how many people I know recently because I'm like one of my friends. He just did one, and I was like, kind of did like his own take, like a separate thing, kind of like a Portal fantasy, like a Harry Potter sort of thing to get people drawn in, but then wrote his own unique story. So I'm really looking forward to reading that. So I had to buy that, of course. I'm like, it was a cool cover, cool concept, and then he had this Dragon Riders kind of thing going. I'm like, oh,
Oh,
I need to
yeah.
do that. And I missed the Kickstarter. He has a new cover coming out. I love the old one. So I was like, oh, please take my money. I was like, I missed it. He's like, no, I got you. But it's just funny, he even said, he's like, we were talking privately. He's like, oh, it's nice. I can just decide that, oh, that cover didn't quite work. I'm going to do this cover for the Kickstarter now. And, he's like, maybe I
Yeah.
reopen the Kickstarter, or I'll do a fulfillment agency or something like that. So yeah, I agree with you. Indies definitely, there are particular books that I want to do indie, and there's other books that I'm thinking about trying to do traditional. But yeah, some of them
Mhm.
I don't want people to have my character control for certain books. Like I just
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
want it all, I guess. So
Yeah, for sure.
well, I'm excited to see your other covers because I gotta say, I that's how I saw you on TikTok. That's the first thing I always notice as an ex design teacher, as I notice people's covers. So I love your covers. So I'd be anxious to see, what book two, if you rebrand that one, what that one's gonna look like. Because they're I was looking at them, I was like, well, these are so nice. Like so definitely matched the genre and definitely caught my eye. So definitely doing a good job there getting people on TikTok to click on them. So we'll go right there with that second one. So you talked a little bit about your genre, but what genre or genres do you currently write in and why?
Yeah. So currently, both my debut trilogy and my 4-book series or quartet, if you will, they're both YA fantasy. I've always, I mean, it's something I still enjoy reading to this day. I love in young adult how you get to watch the characters grow so much. You get that coming of age theme. Um, you know, you can kind of have some character, like you kind of have an age range flexibility too,
Yeah,
especially nowadays. Sometimes you can get away with having maybe a character that's in their like early 20s instead of like teens, but it's that early, figuring everything out kind of stage, which is fun to play with in fantasy too, because I mean, if you've got kind of a medieval setting, it makes sense that they're going to be younger. People are dying every year old.
Yeah, true.
So it's like,
Yeah.
okay, they're in the prime of their life. Everybody is at war. The parents and the older generations dying off in war, but so that sort of makes sense, I guess,
Pretty
sometimes with
true,
those.
yeah. As a history teacher, yeah, it's pretty true, yeah. Never thought of it that way, but that's very fair.
Right.
Like
I
14, you're the prime of
also
your life.
right, exactly. I also just I think I enjoy writing those firsts of like, you first figure out what your purpose is in life. You first fall in love. You first go to war, I guess, because we're talking fantasy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. First dragon you
So
fight,
that's
that kind of thing.
exciting for me too. The character growth can be great. They start out point A, and then by the end of the books, you're like, wow, they've grown so much, even if they've only aged a year or however, however much time you span over your series.
Yeah.
Um, and also I'm a former high school teacher.
Mm.
So, I do like the idea of writing books that are accessible, to
Yeah, yeah.
teenagers and sometimes middle schoolers, depending on, you know, what they like to read. So yeah, I've always kind of loved YA for the fact that like the audience is pretty broad. Like I have a lot of adults that read my books, but I also have teenagers that read my books. And I enjoy the fact that, people young and old are going to pick up my books. If I wrote adult fantasy that was, maybe a little bit heavier, I just wouldn't have that broad age range for my audience and stuff. And I don't know. I enjoy that. I enjoy writing for a variety of people.
Oh,
Um yeah, and that's what I currently write. I guess I was gonna say I am thinking about branching out a little bit, but I'm still working in the fantasy
mm.
zone. So yeah, not too much.
Are you thinking about branching out of fantasy or out of young adult fantasy?
Kind of out of young adult. My protagonist in my current work, my nano project, really,
Mm,
is a little bit older.
mm.
Um, I don't know. I was going to say the themes are a little bit darker, but maybe not really because I have all that war in my YA books. But yeah, it is a little bit older. I'm thinking it's probably a little bit more new adult, which I
Gotcha.
know is really dominated by indie authors right now.
Yeah.
But primarily it's a more of a retelling. Whereas all of my other books were kind of original works. This I decided, what, I want to take this classic book, I want to retell it as a fantasy. So it's kind of more of a fantasy romance, exploring that. So it's still got the darkness that people are used to. I always have characters dying or something epic happening. So people will still find familiar themes and recognize my style. But yeah, maybe it's a little bit older. Like maybe older teens would be more interested in it and stuff. So of course adults. So yeah.
Cool. I love retellings. I like Curse was really cool. I feel like, it's a great
Oh, I love, yeah.
I just unique stories like Hook. Hook was the first movie I saw in theaters, and that retelling of Peter Pan, where he's an adult and then discovers he's Peter Pan. It's like goes back to Neverland, like that. I think that really, like solidified retellings for me. I want to actually. I've been trying to figure out how to do it.
Oh
I
yeah.
want to redo one for the Pied Piper. I want to make it where he's actually
Oh
not the
yes.
villain. That the
I like it.
adults were the villain. Yeah. And he like saved them, but then
Mhm.
they just made it seem like he was the villain. um, and-
Yeah.
but yeah, I read like Curse came out and I was like, oh, I really want to do retelling of like a fable or something. Like, yeah, retellings are cool, especially if you can do them like in a really, like unique way like that. I think it's just a unique story. Take those good parts that people liked, right? And then, take them over. But yeah, I think
Yeah, I think that's why people love them so much. Why,
I
I
agree.
love them too, is because they're familiar. So they're like, there's like that comfort or nostalgia a
Yeah,
little
yeah,
bit
yeah.
that you get, but then you get that twist and you're like, oh, what a cool new way to look at the
Yeah.
story. So yeah, I know fairy tale retellings and fables are really popular, and I think I want to try to explore those. I went like a weird route because I think I may have seen some. Most of the time I see them done as contemporary romance, but
Mm.
I'm doing Pride and Prejudice and
Oh,
retelling
cool.
that in like a fantasy kind of gothic
Oh, that's
setting. So it's
cool.
kind of creepy, kind
That's
of,
cool.
kind of different, but
I mean, the
um
zombie one did really well, so I mean,
right? And that's
yeah,
kind of what I thought. I was like, okay, like everybody liked seeing Elizabeth killing
yeah, yeah.
zombies. So now let's see what Elizabeth does with ghosts.
Oh, that's cool.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I've had a lot of fun with this one. So I'm
Oh,
really
that's good.
excited.
Oh, that's really cool. I feel like that's always like a really good sign. Like when you're having a good time, other people are gonna having a good time, and
Oh, yeah.
that's the best thing, really. So I stopped working on one of my projects. I was like, I was not having fun. I was like, I just need a break, and now I'm going back.
Oh,
Oh, this is fun again. I'm like, now I'm actually not wasting my time. So
exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Cause like if you're not enjoying it, it's like you kind of have to question yourself like, is the story bad? Or am I just in a burnout phase? Or, is this story not fun?
yeah,
Is there
yeah,
a
yeah.
reason I don't want to write it? You really, you really have to, yeah, check yourself there. Because if you don't want to write it, you're definitely not going to want to read over it and edit it. And if you don't want to do that, no one else will.
Yep. Yep. My friend, he's an author, and he's got like a sign that he made himself on the way out of his office where it's like, check yourself before you wreck yourself. And then he like wrote something about his writing, or like in your writing your current project or something. And he like leaves every day thinking that. So when he's frustrated, he looks in the mirror and sees that on his mirror going out of his office. So then he thinks to himself, oh, maybe I should take a break and go do something else. I'm like, that's a really good idea. So that's where I was
Oh,
like,
yeah.
yeah, this is not working. So if I don't want to read it, no one else wants to read it. So
Yeah.
right there. Well, I'm looking forward to that. That sounds really cool. And I do feel like your covers too, like, do really. I just have to say, like, really hit the YA for me, in terms of fantasy. I mean, like, right away, I was like, oh, these are really cool. And then when I saw, that I clicked on your profile, saw, YA fantasy, I was like, oh, that makes total sense. So, and it's cool because I think, you'll get I like when people say, like young adult authors say, oh, I have the younger and the older. Well, that's cool because then, once those younger adults, become older adults, they can just carry over to maybe some of your, other things like your Pride and Prejudice retelling. So I think that's a great strategy there. So.
Yeah, for sure. Nothing like growing up with an author.
Oh my gosh. You're gonna make me nostalgic. R.A. Salvatore, like I read so many books and I was at the bookstore waiting, and that was like the thing my mom did when the grades came in, is like she's like, all right, well, let's go get a book. And I remember sitting there, I'd get a couple and I would always wait, like a year, and I usually had two out by then. So I get like two, and yeah, it definitely feels better growing up with an author than John
Mhm.
Flanagan was one for me too, but
Oh, yeah, yeah.
regardless, but now he's got a whole nother series that makes me now I'm about to have my own child, and like the second series, like the Royal Ranger, I get really emotional. So I'm like, I know how Will feels at times now, but
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, that's funny. So for that third one there, this is the one I'm always most interested in, is what people's books are about. So what are your Silent Kingdom and Cursed Empire series about, and how did you come up with these ideas?
Yeah. So, Silent Kingdom is the debut trilogy, and
Hmm.
actually, both series are set in the same world.
Oh, that's cool.
Silent Kingdom comes first chronologically.
Hmm.
That one is about, and I guess really maybe the best way to explain it is to say how I came up with the idea. So I
Oh.
was wondering, what would it be like if I had this protagonist who had like this magical, gift that she just realized she had one day, that allowed her to sort of kind of have like visions or sudden bursts of understanding of like the truth. So,
Mm.
she's just sitting there having dinner, for instance, and all of a sudden something clicks and she realizes, oh, this is actually what's happening here. This is all wrong. And so she has like a vision moment where she discovers this really kind of deadly secret, like puts her in major danger. And unfortunately, her gift also causes her to kind of blurt it out uncontrollably. Like, because my question was, what would happen, if this girl has this gift of the truth? She can't help, blurting it out, sharing it with people. And, how would people deal with that? What kind of different ways or would people deal with, a difficult truth or a dangerous truth? So, the first time she has to run for her life.
Oh, geez.
um and it kind of spun from there. That was kind of the core question. It then grew into a whole series. But it's about this young princess. She has this deadly secret, basically this truth, that um one of the royal family members wants to cover up. So she flees for her life, lives in hiding for a while. She's kind of trying to start a new life for herself. And then she starts hearing rumors of like a war and a building rebellion and, some tyranny. And she starts to realize, maybe I need to go back and, face my past and face these dangers. Um, and then it kind of grows from there. So after the end of book one, I end on a little bit of a cliffhanger. Like we kind of have some resolution for some of the main conflict of book one. And then we go on into like the classic quest for book two and book three. So they're all connected. It's like one big story.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, my original idea really focused on this one concept. And I originally thought I was going to be able to cram it into a short story. Realized that wasn't happening. It grew into a novel, which then, as we see, grew into a series. So yeah, the idea was really too big, apparently. um, and then in the final book in that trilogy is where the whole idea for the Cursed Empire series developed, because my
That's cool.
protagonist travels, on her quest. She travels to another kingdom, and there's kind of some internal conflict brewing in that other land, that she gets involved with a little bit, and then she ultimately is able to leave that situation, take care of her own kingdom. But I realized, I want to explore this more. So, Cursed Empire series is 3 years later and basically kind of explores this question of what happens after the villain is defeated. So I have new characters, new main characters, it's in this different land. You do get to meet the villain of one of the villains, in my previous series. And so you start and the villain's dead. And one of my main characters is her daughter. And
Mm.
so we're exploring how how she handles that. Her mother was actually very loving to her. And so she views the heroes who defeated her mother as the villains. And so I kind of explore two sides of this conflict and how maybe the heroes, after they defeat the villain, might start becoming kind of villainous themselves.
Ooh.
And just kind of this whole gray area of how, no one side is entirely right. Not everybody on one side is good. There's bad guys on both sides, people who get caught up in their lust for revenge or, their greed or their desire for power, and do some cruel things. And just kind of show my main characters kind of trying to navigate that world and
Mm.
trying to see if they can ever have peace, with all of these conflicts. And yeah, there's a lot of gray areas and some characters that you like root for. Some characters my readers are like, I don't know if I like this character, but I kind of understand where they're coming from. Um, so yeah, it was really interesting to write because the inner conflict and the character growth, like I was talking about before, there's just so much character growth and stuff. Sometimes they go in more of a villainous direction and you're not sure what's going to happen. Sometimes they kind of keep growing for the better. But yeah, it was really interesting to explore. It kind of explored some heavy topics too, really. There's a lot of prejudice and hate and a lot of myself asking, can people overcome these things? Can there be redemption in some of these? Can love really conquer some of these awful situations? Can people find peace in, this horrible war and all of this hatred? And yeah, so, but yeah, I really enjoyed writing that because I don't know, it's kind of therapeutic to explore that and
Yeah, 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 yeah.
and see, and kind of ask yourself those questions. So yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, you really got me thinking now. Like, yeah, I wonder what the what the villain's children think. Like, that's a really good.
Right? It's like you don't really see the hero those as heroes
Yeah,
when your mom or dad was killed, right?
yeah. I'm trying to remember what Jamie Foxx was in it. It was like this. I think it was The Kingdom. I think it was The Kingdom, and it was like took place in the Middle East, and it had one of the most profound endings. That it's kind of like that, like I've ever seen. And um,
Mhm.
this spoiler, it's like 12. I think it's like 13 years old. But one of the good guys dies. Good guys, I say,
Mhm.
dies, and then says something to Jamie Foxx, and then they at the same time had killed somebody on the other side, and then that guy said to his kid the same thing. And then they pan into Jamie Foxx's character and then this kid, and somebody's asking both of them that question. They say, "What did he say to you before he died?" And Jamie Foxx said to kill them all. And then it goes to the kid whose dad died, and it says the same thing, kill them all. And it's interesting, right, where you see both sides, and you just see the conflict just keeps going because the same thing keeps happening. So that's a lot of this. That's like you did the same thing in a
Yeah.
fantasy setting, which is like really really cool. So yeah, that's neat. I'm gonna have to be thinking about
Mhm.
that one. I'm gonna write that one down. So
Yeah.
that's a writing
Yeah, it's
exercise.
really a really interesting concept to explore. Yeah.
Yeah. Like what happens if what's the Hun's name from Mulan? Like what happens if his son come or his daughter comes back?
Right.
Like
I can't oh man. Wow, I am blanking.
I
I
don't
watched that movie
I
so
love
many
that
times
guy
as a kid
too.
too.
Yeah, he's such a great villain. Like I'm
He
blanking.
is a great villain.
But
Yeah,
what if
it's
he had a
like, what if he had
daughter,
a kid
right?
back home?
Yeah. And then
What if
what
he
if
was a
yeah, what if
great father?
oh we're about to write Mulan 3 right here.
Yep.
Yeah, oh my God, yeah. But that's like that'd be really cool. So I think you opened up a Pandora's box for me there.
Oh yeah.
This is
Well, yeah,
literally
because
my
like
idea.
the
So
the
yeah.
villain's kid, like, yeah, it's like, okay, they can follow in their parents' footsteps, or maybe not. Like maybe because they grew up in this sheltered, great setting with this great parent. It's like, or maybe they don't, maybe they kind of have like good and bad traits. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's like, what if they, they have the potential to go either way, but if they go in a more heroic direction, they're kind of betraying their parent, so there's just so
Yeah.
much conflict.
That is really
There's
cool.
so many possibilities.
Yeah. I think that's why I like Batman, like Damian Wayne so much, like he's raised by morally great characters like Ra's al Ghul, like Talia Ghul, Ra's al Ghul's daughter, and but then he's given to, to Bruce, and then he's got to kind of he's one of the most morally great characters I think I've seen in like the DC universe. And yeah, and he's always so interesting in his interactions. I think because of that, because he literally was a villain's, I guess I don't ever really consider her a villain in the comics, but I guess she is, right? And yeah,
Yeah.
that's really cool. Oh, that's a really good idea. What to do as like a writing exercise. I just think that
Do
sounds really
it.
fun. I wonder if we could add a villain's child to. Like, I want to get somebody really cool. Like, yeah, I'm gonna have to think of that.
Yeah, we have to.
I'll let you know on TikTok once I.
Yeah, let me know. Yeah, the perfect villain and their
Yeah,
child, and like
oh,
maybe
that's
it's the
cool.
next retelling. It's
Yeah, you
the
never
sequel to
know.
a fairy. I mean, fairy tales have some fun villains. Hmm.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, what if you did that as a retelling? Oh man, oh that's.
Maleficent's daughter or
I
son,
was thinking about that. Yeah, or what if
right?
Maleficent had a son and just didn't tell anybody? Oh my God, that'd be so cool because he would have like if you went with like I like the movie one with Angelina Jolie because she has such cool powers. He'd be like
Right?
basically like half Fae, right? Like that'd be really
Yeah,
cool.
which is also like the all the rage, so you can't
Yeah,
go
yeah, yeah.
wrong.
Oh yeah,
Morally
that'd be
gray
cool.
Fey man,
Yeah,
boom,
yeah, yeah. Oh, that's really cool.
sold.
Yeah, I know, right? Everybody's like, take my money right now. You put that on TikTok with a good cover, and that thing is gone.
Right?
Oh, that's awesome. That's really cool. So for the fourth one, what do you think makes your books stand out in your genre?
So the thing that I repeatedly hear from like my readers, because sometimes as an author, I feel like it's hard. You know, you're always comparing yourself, and I I know I focus so much because everyone's always asking like, what are your comp books, you know, or authors, you know, who can you compare to? So sometimes I'm trying to draw parallels, you know, and so then you're like, oh, but what makes me different?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Everyone's asking me that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, so I like to pay attention to what my readers say, you know, and early readers too, like betas and, you know, ARC readers. And they often tell me that they really like, you know, like my unique world building.
Mm.
They just feel like my worlds and like, I guess the culture or
Oh, cool.
tradition, or even sometimes maybe my spin on the magic system, like they find it interesting. You know, it's like, there's only so many different ways I guess you can do magic,
Yeah,
but you know they're
definitely.
like, oh, this is kind of cool, you know, or the culture that you built around this, you know, feels really unique. You know, or they just say, you know, this is really vivid, you know, I feel really immersed in the story. So I feel like those are kind of the ways that I stand out. I mean, that's the feedback I consistently get is, you
Yeah,
know, like, okay, your story is very vivid. I'm very consumed by it. And oh, this, you know, especially with Cursed Empire, I had people saying, oh, I really like, you know, the world building. I really like the
yeah.
unique culture. So
Sounds
I
cool.
thought that was cool.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Always happy to hear that as an author.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. As somebody that's always trying to build really cool fantasy cultures, I think that is a really good compliment. So that's one I'm always trying to strive for myself. So
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
You make a good point. That's why I asked it because my friend and I were talking about this, and he's like, so I asked him, I said, well, what thing? He's like, well, everybody keeps comparing me to so and so, and I'm like, well, do you think you're like so and so? He goes, I really don't think so. I'm like, well, like what makes your book stands out? He's like, I don't really know, and I'm like, maybe you should think about it. Like,
Right? Like, what
like,
ways are you different? What ways are similar? I
yeah,
mean, sometimes depending on the author that you're compared to, like, there's a lot of times I just take it as a compliment because, you
yeah,
know, I'm like, nothing's completely unique, you know, like,
yeah. It's kind
it's
of
just
hard.
how you tell the story. No idea is brand new, nothing like that, you know. Like, there was a while there with my Silent Kingdom series, I was really flattered. Like, she's not in the young adult zone at all anymore. So I don't feel like this, I would not use this comparison at all. But for a while there, when Throne of Glass, I think, was not fully finished,
Oh,
and A
gotcha.
Court of Thorns and Roses was kind of in the
Mm,
earlier books where it was still considered a
yeah,
little more YA.
yeah, yeah,
People were
yeah.
comparing me. They're like, "Oh, you remind me a little bit of Sarah J. Maas," you know, like
Wow.
Silent King. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I am so flattered,"
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know.
I would take
Now,
that
yeah,
any
like
day
I
of the
said,
week.
I wouldn't use that now
Yeah,
because
yeah, yeah,
she's like writing spicy fantasy romance, and I'm
yeah.
writing young adult. It doesn't, our brands don't match.
Remember,
But yeah,
remember
there's
one of my
times when that's the highest form of flattery is to be
yeah, yeah,
compared to another author, right?
yeah, yeah. Oh, that's super cool. It's so funny that you said that though with the like the third book, because I remember when one of my friends on TikTok like did like a reaction for
Oh,
reading, and she was like, "Oh, oh my!" Like she's like, "I think I have to stop this." And she like stopped it, and I
oh,
laughed
it's so
so
funny.
hard because I didn't know at the time because I think she was the first one that I had seen have a reaction to it. So I was like, "What was that about?" She goes, "Oh, you would not believe what I just read."
Oh, that's
It was
so
really
funny.
funny.
The reaction videos are priceless. I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
I
yeah.
recently saw like, I don't remember who, but on TikTok, there was a guy
Yep.
who was reading
His wife
ACOTAR
was
for the
having to
first
read it.
time.
Yeah, yeah. Oh my
Yeah,
god.
and he got to like the second book near the end, and he was like, "Whoa, okay." The reaction was just great.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love that. He was like in the kitchen or something at the table, like kind of freaked out. Yeah. I was laughing. My wife, I showed it to her. She's like, "Have you read that yet?" I was like, "No." Like my friend and I were gonna like book club them, and we just been taking forever for Malazan Book of the Fallen. So I need a break soon. But yeah, that's really cool though, because I do hear a lot of people say, which is why we put it on our list. Like with the world building, and culture and and things like that. And that's one reason why I put it on the list for us, because I'm like, oh, I really want to, see what people are talking about. So yeah, I think it's really cool to be compared to Sarah
Yeah,
there. That's awesome. Goals. Goals.
right? Goals.
Like
I
writing it down.
might not be like later,
Yeah,
you know,
book one and
current
book two
Sarah J.
goals.
Maas, but
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
you know, maybe more earlier Throne of Glass, Sarah J. Maas.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I can take
That's
that.
fair. That's fair. Well, that's like you said earlier. Like, I mean, I teach middle school, and that's like, I mean, I'm just used to reading. Like, I have this one urban fantasy where it's like if parents of kids ask me, they'll be like, "Oh, should my kid read this?" I'm like, maybe like in high school, like, but all my other stuff's like PG-13.
Mhm.
But yeah, I definitely know that feeling. Usually, I try to.
Right.
It's like somebody asked me, they're like, "Can I swear on here?" I'm like, "You can." I'm not going to. I said sometimes my kids find me, and I don't want them to be like, "Oh, come to school, be like, I
Yeah.
heard you swear last night." Be like, "No, you didn't."
Oh, yeah, yeah, that's tough. Social media as a teacher, yeah, I've been there, I've been there.
Yep.
And they will find you.
Oh
They're good
yeah.
at it.
Yep. They're always like, "I found your TikTok." I go, "Just keep passing." I go, "You're it's not for you. It's okay." For that fifth one there, speaking of world building, how did you go about the world building for your novels?
Yeah. Um, so it was kind of nice going into Cursed Empire because like I said, it's set in the same world as Silent Kingdom. So I kind of had like some of
Yeah.
the basis already down. I actually decided I wanted multiple magic
Mm.
systems because I'm a glutton for punishment, I think.
Oh, that's a good idea though if you have
But it
different
was
like
so fun. It was
yeah.
so fun. So I basically gave like each culture in this new series like their own magic system. So in Silent Kingdom, I mostly just explore like this magic system that revolves around gifts. So like my protagonist that has the truth gift, she's got that. Some others have gifts. They're kind of rare though in that trilogy. There's just they're not seeing it quite as often. They travel, they mostly see others with magical gifts. And then I started the Cursed Empire series, and I've got two. I start with just two main cultures, and I've got they're called the Alrenians. They have the magical gifts, so that's kind of familiar for readers that have already read Silent Kingdom. um so like their magic involves like, okay, I the truth gift. I can see the truth, or I have a vision of the truth. They can share the truth. They can't lie because they're gifted with the truth. That's can sometimes be a weakness.
Yeah.
Or they have a courage gift where, they have this, more courage than the average person in difficult situations, but they can actually share their courage with others as well. So, if they're in a battle or some sort of altercation, they can kind of share that and so encourage those around them.
Mm.
Um, then I decided, okay, for this other culture that I have, the culture, the Forwin culture that's kind of at odds with the Alrenians, I wanted to have a different, kind of more unique magic system. So for them, they're kind of a very religious people.
Mm.
And so their magic comes from their God, and they can actually kind of hear it around them. Like they talk about being able to hear his song. And so it's like they hear it in music and they feel the magic flow through them. And so they kind of have access to almost infinite powers as long as they can focus and concentrate and kind of hear his song and kind of
Oh, that's cool.
let that flow through them. And then I later in later books in that series, I went into elemental magic with another culture because who doesn't love water and fire and air magic?
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
good old classics of elemental magic. So, kind of figuring out the magic systems, that kind of helps you a little bit with building the culture. I usually try to draw from, everybody draws inspiration from somewhere. So, like the Alrenians, for instance, I kind of was inspired by Roman culture, kind of that brutality. They're very war and conquest based. They're very proud. Um, their magic or their magical gifts that they have often kind of go hand in hand with that. Some of them have a war gift where they're particularly talented, in battle. The courage gift really works well with that as well. Um, but then, I kind of went with a harsher language, when I'm trying to think of like, okay, what kind of words do they speak? They're also kind of, you've probably seen the dragons on my covers. Like
Yeah.
they have the dragons, they're the dragon riders. So they're known for being fierce and powerful and always being on top. Um, and they think they're better than everyone else, basically. Let's put it that way. So it's kind of that culture, but I kind of put it in more of like a Greek inspired setting.
Mm.
And then I have the Forwin culture, and I decided, okay, they're very communal and religious, Um, they're kind of based on like almost like Hawaiian culture, but
Oh,
also my childhood obsession with the Prince of Egypt.
Mm.
where they're very, I guess, kind of like the Israelites in that story, where they want their freedom, and they're trying to rise up from oppression from
Mm.
the Iranian culture, and they're very religious and close knit. But they've kind of got Hawaiian inspired names and language, and then they've got this cool, um, like I said, these magical powers. And then when I was thinking of like traditions and stuff, I'm not really sure exactly where I came up with some of my ideas. Sometimes you just kind of get those random strokes of, oh, this is cool. Like, here's some inspiration. I decided that they have like colorful ribbons that they wear, either like in their hair or around their necks or
Oh, cool.
around their wrists, and they'll kind of braid them sometimes like bracelets or necklaces and whatever, and each color represents something, and they'll like
Mm.
gift them to each other and like significant points in their life.
Oh, that's cool.
So kind of doing that, I don't know, a lot of my readers liked that. They're like, oh, this is really cool. And it was kind of, I guess it just emphasizes that they're very like people centered.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so it's a lot of times it's kind of like taking different cultures and like looking at them and being like, okay, well, this is kind of inspired by this, but I'm going to put my own twist on it. So kind of thinking of something familiar, and kind of going with that, like, oh, the Romans and their brutality, that's interesting to write about, but like, how can I put it in a fantasy setting and kind of make it my own unique thing?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So yeah, that's probably the best way I can describe it. I think sometimes too, I subconsciously draw on that. Like the Alrenians were honestly, so I wrote about them in my Silent Kingdom series. I actually, when I was a kid, I wrote a lot of different books, and I had early ideas of like their culture even back then.
Oh, wow.
So, so a lot of that stuff has been with me for so long. And it's only recently I've been like, I think it's kind of loosely inspired by like ancient Rome, ancient Greece a little bit, but it's got its own stuff. But I think that was in my brain when I was coming up with this, so yeah, I don't think I consciously drew from that so much as later I realized that's a good comparison. That's how I'm going to describe it to people so they kind of get it.
No, yeah, that makes total sense. I do like the bracelet thing though. That's like something where I'm always on the lookout for things as a history teacher. I'm like, oh, that's like something unique or or interesting. Oh, there's this like Spotify like audio book that's free that I've been listening to. I'm totally blanking on the author, but it's called Born to the Blade, and it's cool because there's a lot of things that I picked up from certain Asian cultures, where I'm like, oh, those are cool things, and then the author literally like really worked them in really well, to different cultures within the book, and I'm like, oh, I'm like that's such good world building, and I'm like, some of the things I just didn't even think of to do. So something like that, that's like something very small. I think some people think the world building needs to be really big things, and
Mhm.
I think a lot of times though, doing those smaller things, that makes your world or the culture more unique makes more sense. So yeah, I think
Yeah,
that
it's like those little like daily moments, or oh, this is what
exactly.
is important to the people, that you start to realize like, okay, yeah, yeah, like it feels more real.
Yeah, yeah. Isn't it cool we get to do? We like to literally get to think up just imaginary people and cultures and then make them real to people. Like I still can't get over that. Like,
Yeah,
like
like your characters are kind of real to people. Like
yeah, and like
they
people
they they
fight
get
over it.
connected. They cry over them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh my gosh. Like speaking of R.A. Salvatore, growing up with him, like there was one character that I grew up with, and there were three that he killed at one point, and I got done with one right during the pandemic, and I like came upstairs and I was just like bawling like a baby. And my wife's like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "No." I'm like, "I'm not okay." I'm like, a character that I've read for 23 years of my life, of 35 is gone. Is literally
Oh,
gone. And I'm like, I literally like I could not finish the book. Like I got to three-fourths and like I think it took me like 2.5 weeks. And I was like, well, maybe he'll bring him back. Did not. So,
oh.
and yeah, but it's funny, right? That, I always tease him
Mhm.
because people always say that, they ask that on Goodreads or something on Twitter. And I'll always tag him and I'll tag him. I'll be like, when he did it, and he made me cry in this book and this book. And I don't say why, and he knows every time. Like Bob's like, here's this guy again. But yeah, it's pretty cool, right? Where people get those cool ideas, and or just really enjoy that thing about your world. So it's cool when I think it's really cool when people say to you or on reviews, right, that like, oh, I really enjoyed your culture or it was really unique. I think that's a huge kudos to you and world building there, because I think sometimes world building is, I think it's like one of the hardest things to really do. It's easy to
Yeah.
do, but it's a hard thing to do well,
Hmm.
particularly something like that. So I think that's really cool. That'd be a really cool Kickstarter for you too, by the way, like doing the bracelets. Like,
That's true. It's like you get your own like cool,
yeah,
yeah,
I would
maybe
do
some,
that. I'd be like,
yeah.
book and a
You can
bracelet.
pick your colors too. What's significant to you? Like this is what the color represents. Choose your
That would be
colors.
really cool.
Ooh.
Yeah. Oh
Hmm.
man. Yeah, I would. One of my friends did that. Well, like I was saying, he did that for his Dragon Riders. So I'm sorry, he did it for his Lucas Hale book. So like they have like these really cool, interesting like bracelets with almost like a gemstone on them, and instead of like wands, they use that as like an essence. I think is how he explained it to me in the summer, and so he was doing those for people that got to like a higher tier, and he did them really well. I mean, they're leather, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. I'm like, I can't do
Ooh.
that. I'm like, I need to,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Gotta
yeah,
find someone else with the talent, right?
exactly. Yeah,
I'm like, sometimes I can be crafty and artistic, but mostly it's like the concept and I need someone else,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be really cool. Yeah, that'd be awesome. I would totally buy that. So what is one writing tool you currently use that you cannot live without? And I use the term tool loosely. Could be like a strategy or graphic organizer or something like that. Could be a book, anything like that. So I was just curious if there's something that you're currently using where you're just like, oh, I really like this tool. And you've used that the last couple of books. And then maybe what's one in the future that you would like to try?
Yeah. So maybe I'm kind of old school and basic because I draft in Word.
Oh, it's the
I
best.
love Word.
Yeah.
I love the editing feed, like, so actually my last series I even formatted in Word.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I've gotten pretty familiar with that. So it's a staple. It's basic for a reason, like why mess with the classics? So I do, that's one thing I'm like, I'm comfortable here. This is where I go. I've tried Google Docs once and
Uh,
I couldn't get on board. I was like, eh. And then I know some authors, swear by, fancier, systems and stuff where they're like, oh, look, I can have all these folders and I can put this here and this here and this here. And I'm like, I just like one document where
yeah.
I can just scroll up and there's my chapter and, like I can navigate Word. I'm like, I don't really need all my world building info right there. To be honest, I'm a pantser. Sometimes I guess I'm a plantser. I kind of plan out some
Best of both
novels.
worlds. Me too.
Yeah, but I
Yeah.
also kind of pants and just kind of brainstorm as I go a little bit. And so, I usually have random notebooks and random notes in my phone that I
Oh
go
yeah.
to and I'm like, okay, yep, this is all I
Me
need.
too.
I pull that up. Yeah. So I can just pull that up and go from that as I write. Like, what was that one character's eye color again? Oh yeah, I've got it over here.
It's always the eye
Uh,
color. My friend said the other day,
it
he
always
goes, I
is.
thought it was blue. He goes, now it's brown. I was like, shut up. Like, thanks though. Like, yeah.
Something that I currently use that's a little bit newer for me, but I found really works well. I was sort of turned off by the idea of trying it out at first. Is actually writing on my phone.
I love it.
Sometimes you just grab it, you pull up the notes app. Because sometimes you're on the go. You can't just open up your laptop.
Yeah, yeah,
I've actually been able to write so much more, like get so many more words out in a day in just those
yep.
random moments where you're like standing in line somewhere or
Yeah, yeah,
something.
yeah.
And you're like, oh, I've got some inspiration. I'm just going to write it down. And so instead of just being like, I don't want to try this. This is weird. I just went for it. My husband and I were actually making this big move across the country.
Mm.
And I was like, I want to keep drafting. I want to write every day. And so I was like, well, this laptop is kind of a pain, even if we set up this charging station here, I've got it in my lap on the car,
Yeah, yeah.
it's like, this isn't working. And we were moving with a dog who always wanted to be up with me. I'm like, I don't have all the space in my lap right now. So phone it is. So yeah, that's something I feel like I've gotten to the point where I can't live without it.
Yeah.
I still prefer to draft on a laptop, can type a lot faster that way.
Yeah.
But it's really handy in a pinch to have your phone, or even just to take notes. When I'm drafting a book, I have running notes of go back and fix this later.
Mm,
So that way, when it comes time to revise, I've got like a little checklist, and it helps me so much because I always feel like it's a little overwhelming starting that out. So I've
yeah.
got like my little cheat sheet of, hey, remember, this is what you needed to address. Because there's a lot of times I'll be drafting a novel and I'll go, oh, that's not working. Keep going, make a note and move on. Otherwise you lose your momentum, and
Yep.
yeah, that saves me. Um, and
Yeah.
then yeah, as far as in the future, what I want to try, I don't know. Have you heard of? I know. I think most people have heard of Vellum for formatting. Have you
Yeah,
heard of
yeah,
Atticus?
somebody just sent me a link for Vellum, and somebody had just mentioned to me Atticus too. So I haven't checked that one out yet, but
Yeah. So I think it was last year. I think they might have actually had a deal when Atticus was still kind of more in like its beta phase,
mm,
to purchase like a
okay.
lifetime use.
Yeah.
And so I was like, you know what? Formatting in Word has worked for me. But it's still kind of time consuming, like to kind
Yeah.
of come up with the template, do all of those things myself. Like, how can I save time? I don't have a Mac, don't want to purchase a Mac just for formatting a book.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I know some people talk about using like Mac and Cloud and all of this, but
Um,
Vellum's also expensive. Mac and Cloud sounds like it's a pain. And
yeah.
also, yeah, I was like, this is a lot. And then I started looking into Atticus and it was like, well, it's newer, but look, this price isn't bad. They're going to keep updating it if I've got lifetime use. So yeah, I purchased it sometime last year, with the intention of, after finishing the Cursed Empire series, which I've done, trying it out for my next books. So I'm working on drafting a book right now. But as I get further along, I'm going to start trying Atticus and see how formatting goes there. I've heard a lot of the updates recently have been really good with it. So, and it sounds like it's really, like you can really customize your images and your themes,
Oh, that's
which
cool.
I feel like in Vellum you couldn't do as much, which is another thing that turned me off. I really like it when I can have like my own headers instead of,
Yeah. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, this
No,
is your
totally.
option, this is what you get. I like unique stuff like that. So that turned me on to Atticus as well, was being able to customize your book a lot more.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I think there's like little things here and there I've seen people add, and I'm like, oh, that's really cool. And I'm like, how'd you do that? And they're like, you don't even want to know. Like it was expensive.
Yeah, it gets
Uh,
intense.
yeah. That's like I was just talking to my co-teacher about this. I'm like, I'm just so tired. I just want to like copy like a clip art image of like a cool sword and just I just want to put it there. I want to put it there. And I just want the formatting new word, to go around it. And I want that for class too. And I'm like, I'm so tired of having to, use different things that will not do that. So yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds really cool. I just actually looked that up to save that for later.
Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
that's a good one. I've not somebody sent it to me literally like the other day. They were just talking about, you know, looking at it and using it. They're like, oh, you might like this because I was talking about finding a formatting tool, software. And I know some people had suggested Vellum, but I'm like, I just paid 10 grand for a furnace and we have a baby on the way. And I'm just like, don't really like Vellum's price right now. Maybe
Oh
later after we
yeah.
start selling some things. But yeah, so Atticus, yeah, that's a good idea. So glad my friend suggested, I had a friend, she suggested adding that as a question. I'm like, oh, that's a good idea. And I've gotten a lot of really good, got a lot of really good answers from that one. So that's really helpful to check that out. So for number 7, oh, I really like this one. I keep forgetting about that I started doing this one. If you could visit one location in your books, where would it be and why?
Ooh. This one's always a little tricky because I'm always talking about all the war and violence in my books.
Well, I really love
uh,
the vacationing in that country, though.
yeah, like, oh, that sounds really nice.
Bustling,
Uh,
busting villas.
right. Ugh. So, I think probably, so in the Cursed Empire series, the first thing that comes to mind, there's like an island kingdom called Forwith, and one particular island has decent, has seen decent peace time and seems like kind of a decent, is like, oh, it's an island. Yeah, that doesn't sound too bad. So yeah, I'd probably start there and then probably stay there because I probably wouldn't survive anywhere else. So yeah.
That's awesome. I always think this is an interesting one for fantasy authors in particular and sci-fi because it's like you spend so much time thinking about the people, like what's going on, and it's always interesting for people to have to pick a location, and then especially
Yeah,
based off of all the things you did to your characters, like
I know, right?
yeah, yeah,
Like, oh, okay, never mind. I don't want to do what they did.
that's really cool. Yeah, a nice little island kingdom, a little island sounds good to me. So,
Vacationy,
yeah,
kind of.
my friend turned the tables on me the other day and asked me, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!" I was like, "I don't even know if I have a nice little island kingdom." Like, I was like, there's too much crap going on, like natural disasters, magic coming in and out,
Oh,
monsters, like
yeah.
warlords.
You're gonna have to create one just for
Yeah,
you and be
that's
like,
actually
this
a
is
really
the
good idea.
secret haven that only I know
Yeah,
about if I ever get thrown into my world.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a good idea. I could call it Haven. That's actually a really good idea.
There you go.
Really cool. Write that down for my writing session later. That's really cool. Be a good little warm up. So for
Yeah.
that for that last one, do you have any news, updates, promos, or current projects that you are currently working on that you can share with us?
Yeah. Well, I guess I kind of already did share a little bit about that Pride and Prejudice retelling that I've been
That'd
working
be
on.
cool. Yeah.
Um, so
Definitely send that.
that is what I'm currently working on.
Yeah.
Currently, um, don't have an official release date announced yet, but I'm just saying, hey, it's coming in 2023.
Oh,
I'll
cool.
tell you more as I get further along in it,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
I do already have like a cover for it. Super excited. So
That's cool.
super excited to plan all that out.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but yeah, so and I'm planning to do a series of like standalone books in this
Okay.
new world. So it will be a series, but like they won't be connected.
Mm.
So each story will be complete, so it can kind of be read in any order too.
Oh, that's cool.
Which for me has been kind of a nice break from these
Yeah,
big series with these
yeah,
huge
yeah,
stories.
yeah.
It's kind of nice to be like, oh, I can have a conflict that I can wrap up in one book.
Yeah.
That'll be kind of exciting and new for me.
And now you
These
know
are
why
books
some of
that
the
don't end
authors.
in
Yeah,
cliffhangers.
yeah,
Whoa.
yeah, yeah. That's hilarious. That's
Uh,
true.
so
That's
yeah, that's
awesome.
kind of my big news right now, kind of what I've been working on. If anybody too, for those who are interested in audiobooks, I do have an amazing narrator, Emery Micah, who's working through the Cursed Empire series now. She's got the first two books, Empire of Dragons and Empire of Traitors, done. So those are released and out and available on Audible. And she just recently sent me the audio files for me to listen to and approve for Empire of Monsters book 3, and she's hoping to start book 4 and that final one early next year. So she's getting through these really quickly.
Yeah,
So gonna
yeah.
have a complete series on audiobook here soon. So
That's
that's
cool.
that's coming soon. I'm super excited. So yeah, that's kind of my big news, really.
That's awesome. That's a lot. That's awesome. Isn't it
Yeah.
funny where it seems like that's not a lot, but really, realistically, like that's a ton of stuff right there.
Yeah,
Like,
there's so much
yeah,
stuff going on, and
yeah,
then like I'm figuring out the rebranding of that other series, so
yeah.
I'm
I was
like,
gonna say, yeah,
I'm juggling all these things, and you think, oh yeah, whatever, not that much is going on. Then you step back and start listing it. I sent out a newsletter on Friday and I was like, okay, I gotta update people. And I was like, ooh, okay, here's all the things that are going on. This is why you guys haven't heard from me in a month. Usually I try to send out like bi-monthly
Mhm.
newsletters. Like, sorry guys, I've been super busy. Here's why.
Yeah, yeah. That's good news though, right? Like instead of certain other people that are maybe taking over a decade to finish a book and not updating people. So at least I think that give the people what they want. They want things, right? So you're giving
Oh
them
yeah.
stuff. That's awesome. Well, that's awesome. So we just want to remind our audience, don't forget that Rachel's books and her social links can be found in the description anywhere where this video or audio podcast can be found. And we just want to remind people too that if you like Rachel's books or her Audible, please make sure that you are reviewing them. That is going to be our big push for season two.
Oh, yeah. They help so much.
Exactly. I just had, like I said, I have my friend Christopher G. Brennan on for the third time, and he's like, "Hey, thanks for your help all the time." And I'm like, I am selfish. I loved his first book. He sent me the second one, and I cannot wait to read it. And I told him, I was like, it's not altruism, it's selfishness. Like I want him
You want the
writing.
books.
Yeah, exactly. I need the precious. So I
Oh,
definitely
yeah.
think that's the best way to do it. So one of my friends read his book the other day, The Hellborn King, and I'm like, "Did you review it?" He goes, "No." I'm like, so then 2 days later, I like sent him like a bunch of pictures like this, and I
Yes.
tried to remind him. But yeah, so we just want to make sure for season two, that's our big push for everybody listening or watching. Just please make sure you're reviewing, especially for really any author nowadays, because we're all kind of in the same boat, but particularly
Mhm.
indie authors because we live and die by reviews. So, but Rachel, thank you so much. It was a pleasure having you on. If there's anything else you have come up, in the future, if you get anything else done, you want to talk about it, or use this as your, release date, things like that. Just let me know ahead of time. We'll get you on again, and we'll get your episode editing and cutting out as soon as we can. And if there's anything else I can do in the meantime on TikTok or elsewhere, let me know. Like I said, somebody before we started recording, they're like, "Hey, can you share this?" And I'm actually about to do that tonight on all my social media outlets. So we are here to help. So if there's anything we can do at all, just let me know, and we'll be more than happy to help you out in any way we can. So
Yeah, thanks. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
yeah, of course, anytime. Well, I hope you guys have a great rest of the night, and I'm sure I'll talk to you soon, not only in email but in TikTok as well. I love the videos you're making, so I try and share them as much
Thanks.
as possible. So, but yeah, you guys have a good rest of the night, and I will talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you.
Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.